Okay, so what if? Hear me out. What if every terrible thing you ever did just never showed up on your face? No dark circles from the guilt, no grief etched into your jaw, no consequences written into your skin. You just stayed gorgeous. You just stayed 20. While everything you actually are rotted somewhere else that no one could see. That is the deal Dorian Gray gets. And Oscar Wilde, the spectacular, tragic, absolutely unhinged genius, wrote 250 pages asking, is that a blessing? Or a slow execution. Spoiler alert. Execution. But before we even crack the book open, I want you to know who wrote this because you genuinely cannot separate Dorian Gray from Oscar Wilde's life. They are the same wound. Oscar Wilde was, and I say this with full reverence, he was one of the most loquaciously brilliant man of his century. And I mean this. The man didn't just speak, he epigrammatized existence. Every sentence out of his mouth was a perfectly constructed blade that smiled at you while it cut. He was celebrated. He was magnetic. He was the kind of person who walked at the room and immediately became the room. He was also gay in Victorian England, which in 1895 got him 2 years of hard labor. Everything taken, his children, his reputation, his health, his whole luminous life, dismantled by the same society who applauded him for decades. He died at 46 in a hotel room in Paris, poor, alone, and reportedly on his deathbed looked at the terrible wallpaper and said, either that wallpaper goes or I do. Even dying, he chose a better line. That man wrote Dorian Gray. This is not a novel by someone who reads darkness. This is a confession by someone who lived adjacently to it his entire life and watched it win. Okay, so this book gives us three men. And I need you to understand all these three because this is where Wilde gets genuinely diabolical. First, Basil Howard. A painter. He's obsessed with Dorian Gray the way only artists gets obsessed. Not entirely romantically, not entirely platonically. Just Dorian is his muse. Dorian is his art. His masterwork. Basil loves sincerely, completely, kind of embarrassingly. He is the guy in the group chat who actually means it when he says he cares about you. Then Dorian Gray. 18 golden, the kind of beautiful that makes other people unknowingly rearrange themselves to be a bit closer to him without even realizing they've done it. He's not particularly deep at the start. He's just young and luminous and completely unguarded. Like a window that hasn't learned to have curtains yet. And then Lord Henry Wotton. Okay, Lord Henry. And I've thought about this a lot. The most insidiously dangerous character in all of English literature. Not because he is villainous, never raises a hand and never threatens anyone, never does anything overtly cruel. He's simply devastatingly, weaponizingly witty. He says things like, the only way to get over a temptation is to yield it. He says things like, to define is to limit. He talks about youth and beauty as if they are the only currencies worth earning. And everything else, meaning, consequences, love, morality, is just the pedestrian concern of boring and unglamorous people. And Dorian, 80, never been told anything except how perfect he is, absorbs Lord Henry. Like he's the first person who made the world sound interesting, which is genuinely the most relatable thing in this book and also the most catastrophic. We have all had a Lord Henry, someone so charismatic and intellectually effortless that their worldview colonized ours before we noticed it happening. You just don't even disagree with them. You just find yourself 3 months later that these thoughts are not yours. That's Lord Henry's, and that's the danger. And now the wish. So basically, Basil is painting Dorian's portrait. Lord Henry is in the corner, scintillating and morally irresponsible. And Dorian, looking at his own perfect image on the canvas, makes a wish. He says roughly, I wish the painting would age instead of me. I'd give my soul for that. No thunder, no devil appearing in a puff of smoke, no dramatic moment of transaction. He just wishes it carelessly, the way you wish for things on birthday candle, not readily expecting the universe to be listening, but the universe was listening. And this is the part that genuinely unsettles me. Wilde never explains the mechanism. Never. There is no supernatural clause. The wish is simply granted because it's wished, as though beauty and vanity and youth in the right combination at the right moment constitute their own kind of dark magic. And I think what Wilde is saying underneath all the Gothic architecture is this: the wish was always available. It's always been there. The descent. Dorian stays 20 forever while the portrait ages for him, and he fills the ears with rare perfumes, jewels, music, and sensation. Then there's Sybil Van, a poor, transcendently talented actress whom he falls for because she makes fiction feel realer than life. When she falls genuinely in love with him, she loses the ability to perform. He drops her the same night. She stumbles on the stage and she kills herself by morning. The portrait gets its first scar. Dorian almost feels guilty until Lord Henry reframes her death as something aesthetically beautiful. And Dorian agrees. That's the real damnation, not the wish. The moment he swaps accountability for a pretty idea, which honestly is the most human thing in the book. Wilde is not really writing about vanity. He's writing about the thing you refuse to look at, the version of yourself you have locked in a room and stacked beautiful distractions in front of. Dorian's portrait just makes it literal, and Wilde knew that room personally. He spent his whole life coding his truth into wit and performance and deflection. The world broke his door down. So when you finish it, the question he's really leaving you with is not about Dorian. It's about you. What's the painting in your attic doing right now? So if you like these kind of content, you can let me know down there on the comments. And yeah, this was it. Hopefully see you in the next one.